Oh, we're going to spend time with Big Ten football coaches. Rank them.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, gang, DP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. You everydayers, thank you very much for what you do. We appreciate you. We want to thank the folks who make these episodes possible. I have Mark Unwell to let you know about FanDuel.
Thanks, DP. This episode of Locked On Huskers is brought to you by FanDuel. With the NBA playoffs going on, now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Now, FanDuel always has great promotions every day. They've got a safe and secure app, and you can get payouts instantly. No waiting for your money to show up. There's no better place. Bet all the playoff action in America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. DP, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Again, thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen, for you coming out and having this conversation. I got some numbers that 40% of our people who watch and consume this content subscribe. The other 60%, hit the subscribe button. Get to that, would you? Those numbers. 40%? Really? Come on. Let's get to that. Couple of things I wanted to cover in this particular episode as we head towards camp and we head towards, it's June. So we have time to prepare ourselves. But the focus and the work, and this is where media sources tend to gather in groups and have discussion over the other teams in the conference and the other players in the conference and the other coaches in the conference. And over the course of this week, we'll talk about other players in the Big Ten Conference and as Nebraska prepares itself. And yes, Nebraska's biggest obstacle and opponent this season is Nebraska itself. And so the internal focus. But we wanted to spend this episode talking about and comparing the Big Ten Conference when it comes to football coaches. And the media has gathered and said, okay, we'd like to rank the Big Ten coaches and decide and determine where, from a resume and reputation level, where the coaches rank, in particular Matt Rhule and some of the discussion. So when you talk about media from Ohio State, media from Michigan State, Michigan, Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State, Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, like Wisconsin, as you go through the list of them and as they talk about Matt Rhule and the expectations for Matt Rhule, then you get into, well, he's an unknown when it comes to Nebraska and the Big Ten Conference. So then it's resume and reputation, and then you start to say the expectation based on annual salary, not the value of the contract, but the annual salary paid to coaches. And in this particular season, that Nebraska will pay what is reported to be $9.25 million to Matt Rhule to run the football program and get the program in space. And you can compare that. You can actually compare that. So Nebraska fans, you'll know on the ledger of where things rate and rank that Matt Rhule is in the top 5 paid coaches in the Big Ten Conference. And yes, you're not paying Matt Rhule for 3 years from now when you start to believe that it will actually be a Matt Rhule team with his talent, his coaching staff fully formed, and schemes and operations at the same level as the people that he's being paid with. Because everybody else is being paid based on work done already. New coaches fall into a different space in the Big Ten Conference when it comes to pay. And then with the expectation of where opponents and media expect them to work from in the course of this upcoming season. So when you talk about Big Ten coaches, you start with new coaches. And if I told you that there's a coach that is going to be paid $4 million this season as a rookie coach in the Big Ten and as a rookie coach in general, you're talking about Purdue and Ryan Walters. And again, for a coach that started coaching in 2009, so he's experienced in being in the deep water, but he's never been in charge of this ship in the deep water. And then doing that in the Big Ten certainly has its burdens and its dilemmas. But Ryan Walters, the expectation is that you cannot expect a first-year coach in a program that was mid to bottom mid, high mid to bottom mid of the Big Ten Conference on a norm with a new coach in that situation. What's to be expected in the Big Ten Conference? So a lot of the collective is that you would expect Purdue to have some struggles, new coach, not the same level of talent, transfer portal, give and take, going and coming, that Ryan Walters is in that space. Then there's another new coach. Luke Fickell is a new coach in a new program. And yes, he's walking into Wisconsin, but I'll ask you, and you can put it in the comments, is Wisconsin known for talent, for having top 4 level talent in the Big Ten Conference? Skill position, do they have the best quarterbacks? They have top 4, top 5 in running backs. Generally, they're in the top 5 in that space. Offensive line, you would probably rank Wisconsin's offensive line talent in the top 5. Receivers, maybe not so much. Tight ends, separate from offensive line and receivers, figuring out what you would put in place. But if you said to Luke Fickell that here's your expectation, he's been a coach, so this is not new to him. Coaching since 1990 in the early 1990s, and 43-25 as a head coach in his tenure as a head coach. But he's being paid $7.5 million in year one. So what is the expectation at Wisconsin? And most media in the conversations I've had is that they expect Wisconsin to be in the top 5 of the Big Ten Conference, even with a new coach and even with a slight dip last season. And then, of course, there's Matt Rhule. Those are the new coaches. But there are some veteran coaches with experience, coaches who are being paid substantial amounts of money to win football games in the Big Ten Conference. Some have had some success, and some have had great amounts of success. We'll put a pin there, and I want to get through. So if we said the top half of the Big Ten Conference coaches and then the bottom half, we're going to go to the half that probably has a little less pressure going into the season, a little bit lower level of expectation, and then we'll get into the greater expectation, those folks at the top who are receiving the most money and have the most eyes on and are assumed to have the most talent in the Big Ten Conference. We'll talk about those when we come back to Lockdown Huskers. Hey, gang, once again, DP here, Lincoln, America. Thank you very much for making Lockdown Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. And again, just a reminder, you can click the pause button, subscribe if you have not. You can also put comments down in the comment section on what you want us to talk about over the course of the next few episodes. Again, we're going to dance around the Big Ten and then compare Nebraska to what's going on in other Big Ten areas. But as we were talking about coaches, winning records, levels of success, levels of expectation, there's some coaches who are in notoriously difficult situations in the Big Ten, right? Trying to recruit the greatest amount of talent, maintain, manage, and keep said levels of talent in the Big Ten. and then compete with the big boys, with the super dogs, right? Those machines at the top of the Big Ten Conference. And there's no disrespect intended, but there are coaches that have high levels of expectation and those that don't. Dr. Tom Allen at Indiana, he goes into the season at 30 and 40. He's been coaching. Look, he's a veteran coach. Been in the coaching game since 1992, took over the program in 2017. But at $4 million a year, that does not put him in the hot seat expectation level of Matt Rhule in Nebraska at his 9.25. Think about it. Matt Rhule makes more than twice what Tom Allen does. Yes, there are some other things in play, the attendance, the fan support, etc. But Greg Schiano's at Rutgers, and yeah, the expectation levels and the fan support and the booster pressure is not the same at Rutgers as it is at the University of Nebraska. That's just a statement of truth. But if I asked you, given the equal amounts of talent, whether you would put Matt Rhule and Greg Schiano on the same level or not, I'm open to your answers. I'm open to your answers because that's literally the discussion we're going to have. At $4 million a year, also is a coach that currently has a 21-28 record as a head coach. Been coaching, a veteran coach, been in the game, been all over the place, but he's making $4 million a year, and there's no way, shape, or form that Mike Loxley and Maryland have the same expectations and the same wishes or the same resume as Nebraska at $4 million a year. So again, you compare what pay rates are, what winning and success looks like in those programs, and a little different. At the $5 million mark, a coach that he's got a winning record. It's not easy to do. It's certainly not the same fan base, and it's certainly not the same expectation. But Pat Fitzgerald has a winning record at Northwestern, and it's not easy to recruit to. Different academic boundaries and request and listen. But at $5 million a year, I think most Nebraska fans would say Pat Fitzgerald has been a superior coach than the Nebraska coach over the past 5 years. And as you measure them, then you have to ask the question: greater expectation, Northwestern or Nebraska? Greater pressure on Matt Rhule and Nebraska than there is Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern. That's just simply how it is. And in an interesting year, opening day is in Minneapolis, and it's PJ Fleck. Now, PJ Fleck is 74-49 as a head coach, making $6 million a year. And he's had Nebraska's number the past few years. The expectation level is up because they've had that level of success. And then you get to the point where people become uncomfortable in staying where you are, and they expect more and want more. This may be one of those years for PJ Fleck in Minnesota, but it's $6 million a year. Brett Bielema is also in that conversation. Bielema, 13-12 in the Big Ten, but 110-70 over the course of his career. He knows how to win, no matter where he's been. And it's not easy to recruit to Illinois. But he's managing. Look, he's above 500. Nebraska fans would be throwing confetti in the air if they had spent the last few years at 500. As a matter of fact, that's literally the standard that they're going to work from. That if Matt Rhule 2 years from now is 13-12, I'm not sure if that's success or not. It's better than what it's been, but my goodness gracious. Put them in that space and then try to measure up to Kirk Ferentz. Different administrative operation level, energy, and space at the University of Iowa. It's just different, but here's a coach. And if you look at the numbers are pretty – he's 186 and 115. This is a legendary coach. This is a 45-year coaching career. And Ferentz, over $7 million a year. But to win at that percentage, again, most Nebraska fans would take that now. I'm not sure that's the standard that Nebraska fans want to live at from this point, but comparing Iowa and Nebraska has been what put Nebraska in the place that it currently exists. Statements over, well, we don't want to be Iowa, except you kind of do. Right now, you'd love to have a coach who's 185 and 115, 186 and 115. You'd take that, right? So the expectation level, who has the greater expectation this season, Iowa or Nebraska? And if Nebraska's standard for levels of success and what's acceptable and what isn't is 6 wins, my goodness gracious, if Kirk Ferentz only wins 6 games this year, I would think that would be the last year of his career. Iowa or not. And how many coaches could work from that level in the Big Ten Conference? That 6 wins, I mean, think the teams that we just named, if they're below 6 wins, it's still an unsuccessful season. No matter what they're being paid, and no matter what programs they run, anybody that I've mentioned so far, 6 wins puts you back on the hot seat or turns up the temperature. And then we get to the other folks. And these are the folks that we have to mention. I just want to tell you that Mel Tucker makes $9.5 million a year. He's 18-14. And 2 years from now, if Matt Rhule is 18-14, he is as secure as a bug in a rug, no matter how you get to the 18-14. And that's the state of affairs at the University of Nebraska. That is more a statement of Nebraska than it is Michigan State. But I would say this: if Michigan State only wins 6 games, the hot seat goes up on Mel Tucker at $9.5 million a year. We'll throw the break there. We'll come back. We'll get to the big boys, and we'll go through. The numbers are pretty astonishing. They're all well paid, but they are all getting results. We'll talk about that on Locked On Huskers. Thank you again, DP here, Locked On Huskers. And again, we thank the folks from FanDuel. We appreciate them helping us get through and make this content available to you. We're talking about Big Ten coaches. And again, Matt Rhule coming into the season at 47-43. That is his head coaching record in college. 47-43. We didn't even put in the NFL, just college. And he's been on this path, right, since 1998. So this is not, he is a new coach to Nebraska. He is not a new coach. And he's not new to being a head coach. But in year 1, he's making more than Luke Fickell, Ryan Walters. Like, he's making the most money of new coaches to Big Ten programs. And at 47, listen, Ryan Day has only won 45 games as a head coach in colleges as well. That's 2 less than Matt Rhule. But Matt Rhule's 47-43. Ryan Day's 45-6. 45-6. Ryan Day will make $9.5 million, $250,000 more than Matt Rhule. Now, he's been in the game. They've been in the game about the same amount of time, give or take a few years. Bigger pressure games, all right? Ohio State's not the same as Baylor or Temple. It's just not the same. Different expectation, different resumes to work from, different legacies to deal with. James Franklin at Penn State, 78-36. As a career, 102-51. But 78-36 at Penn State. Again, same longevity of career, experience, etc. But James Franklin's going to make $10 million this season. And 6 wins cannot be a part of the discussion at Penn State. Unacceptable. It would not be accepted this season. As a matter of fact, because if he's having the same sort of success that he's had, he's probably in line for what some people would say is a promotion to a program that gets access to more talent than they have at Penn State. And Penn State has talent. I mean, if you're talking just talent, Penn State's in the top 4 in the Big Ten Conference, maybe top 3. Like, roster for roster that you would say that Penn State, maybe Ohio State, or Michigan? Are there programs in the Big Ten that have more talent than Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State? And where does Nebraska rank when you talk about that talent? Where would you put Nebraska in talent? Just roster for roster, position for position. Where would you put them? You can put those down in the comment section. And I'm okay with the discussion because I would say if you're measuring rosters, right? Start with offensive lines, defensive lines, maybe quarterbacks. Where would you put Jeff Sims in the Big Ten? We'll do that list as well. We'll go through that running game, receiver groups, defenses, and defensive coordinator. Like we'll go through all of the teams in the Big Ten. But when you're talking coaching, currently sitting on the throne in the Big Ten Conference, it is Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. And Harbaugh is at 128-45. Now, I just for perspective's sake, I want you to get a grasp that Ryan Day makes $9.5 million, Jim Harbaugh makes 10, James Franklin makes 10. And when I said that that's the three of the faces on the Mount Rushmore of current coaches in the Big Ten Conference, there's a reason. And Michigan, having won 2 Big Ten Conference championships back-to-back, that this is the number, that at $10 million. And Harbaugh's wavered on that number and said, okay, do some things and make the magic numbers work. But you're talking about 128-45 for Harbaugh, 45-6 for Ryan Day, and then for James Franklin, you're at 78-36. Luke Fickell is the next one in that range at 63-25. PJ Fleck is 74-49. And everybody else is a substantial step down. Kirk Ferentz is probably number 6. But media around the country has put Matt Rhule anywhere from 6 to 8 in the Big Ten Conference, not having led a program in the Big Ten Conference. And to see how this plays out. I only set the table so that as we have these discussions going forward, expectation and resume matter. Your ability to deliver under pressure because, again, we just named 6 programs. And, again, Nebraska just beat Iowa, so okay. But those top 5 programs are unique, they're special, and they will be difficult to pass. Now, yes, Nebraska should have beat 4 of these teams in the past 2 years if they had just simply not shot themselves in the foot. Nebraska's not that far away, and Nebraska fans fit firmly in the middle, in the median when it comes to are they close or are they not close. We've never seen this Nebraska team under Matt Rhule. We've never seen Matt Rhule under fire in the Big Ten Conference, and we've never seen him against Harbaugh, et cetera, on a week-to-week basis. They've had individual matchups over the course of time, but we've never seen Matt Rhule under Big Ten week-to-week pressure and to see what the results are. It will be an interesting month of June as they maneuver into training and development, healing and recovery and installing. But that's quite the list. If you're a Big Ten football fan, that is 14 coaches, and 12 of them you pretty much know what you're going to get. From year to year, you pretty much know what you got to get, and then the talent, you could say the same. Interesting year in the Big Ten Conference. That'll be it for this episode of Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. We'll close with the 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.